We're working on this design challenge where we're implementing this payment calculator. In the last video, we learned how to create a custom UI slider subclass that we could then import with UI view representable in order to have a custom icon as well as a custom thickness so that we could customize how thick this track is. And I think we want to do something like maybe 12. So we can customize that using our new control. And now what we're going to do is we're going to build out this top card, and then we're going to have to implement another control in the next video. So let's start by putting together the pieces that are going to allow us to flesh this out, including the drop shadow, and sort of build up the structure of this application so that we can calculate the loan payment. So in the previous video, I sort of showed what the final project looks like. We can customize this. We can drag back and forth. We can set the down payment. And so you can sort of see how this impacts your estimated payment. You can change the controls. We've got this nice little widget for switching between all of these different things in the application. So it's pretty fun. We're going to continue with the next part, which is customizing how we do this. So let's dive right in and get started with that. So I'm going to move this up so that my head is not obscuring the UI above me. And we're going to start building out the content here. Now, sometimes I just do everything in one spot, but I've been noticing that SwiftUI on my Mac gets like locked up. And I don't know if it was just Xcode. I was in Xcode, I think, 16.0. I've just downloaded 16.1. I see that 16.2 is in beta. 16.1's got a fix that potentially fixes like a dinit issue. I don't know if I saw the documentation up, but let's go look at that real quick. P.S. My name is Paul Solt and from Super Easy Apps. So these release notes I noticed were talking about something in the previews. There was this preview shell crash. So hopefully that one's fixed. If you're not already on 16.1, download 16.1 and let me know how it's going. So far, I don't think I've seen it, which is a good thing. Okay, so what we need to do is we have to match this UI. Let me pull up Pixelmator again so we can sort of see what our target is. We've got some colors. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is create a colors structure. And we'll go ahead and import these colors that we are going to need. And we'll do static. Let's call this I think this is our main color. So we'll just call it main. It's going to be a color. And then we're going to do the red, green, blue. We can just do 185 divided by 255. 241 divided by 255, and so on. We actually don't need the decimal place here because these are fractional values. You can look at the type. They're going to be doubles. And since that type is there, it's going to make sure that these are not going to just be integers and be zeros, which would not be what we want. So we can make it a little bit less verbose by doing that. So we've got our main color. We're going to have our thumb color. Let's call it just thumb. And then this will be red. Press enter after we type red. And it's going to be 58 divided by 255. 208 divided by 255. 54 divided by 255. So you can double check those, make sure that you match if you're following along. And then our last one, we're going to have our own version of blue, which is going to be the blue color. We start typing red. It suggests this one. I'm pressing enter to autocomplete and then typing 1 divided by 255 tab 116 divided by 255 and then press tab and then 238 divided by 255. And then you can do a closing parenthesis, and that will get us out of that. So I think those are the main colors. Let me see if there's any other colors we need. We could have more colors in here. I'm just going to do this for the default. I'm going to actually use some other colors from Apple for some of the other colors, but this is a good starting point. And this is always something that we can extract out. So if we want to extract this out, we'd need a separate import for SwiftUI. And if we do that, we can type that here or the other file. We cut this out, and let me show you this trick. We are going to paste it right here, and it creates our colors helper file. Okay, so that is a starting point. And with that, we can customize this thumbnail to use the tint color that we want. So we're going to insert colors.main. And this wants a UI color. Okay, and that's the wrong one. So it's not the tint there. It is going to be the tint down here that we need to adjust. In this case, it's just colors.main. Up here, we need to do that UI color of the colors dot. This is going to be our thumb color. And so there we go. We've got a tint color that's matching what the design has. This potentially gets regenerated all the time, so we don't want this to regenerate. So just for simplicity's sake, since we're not loading an image, I am going to store it in a static let property because I don't want to re-render this image every time we need it. So this is going to be our thumb image. And we're going to paste this logic right here. So that will create our thumbnail, hopefully once. And then let's just fix the parentheses down here. I'll make this a little bigger since it's a little small. All right. So we're going to do a self.thumb image, and that will give us the image that we want to use here. Okay, so our preview should be working. It should be fully functional. We now have stylized it in sort of the same fashion that we have over on the right. And let's just check our color. So we started with a color.blue, but we really want to use our new color. So I'm going to pass in colors.blue. You'll see that shifts the hue just slightly. So that's our new blue color that we want to be using everywhere in the application, right here on this line. Okay, so up next, we're going to start building out these cards. And similar to how I did it down below, I'm typically going to extract and put into computed properties. I think I'm just going to do that from the start because I've been having issues, and maybe that was an Xcode 16.0 issue. I've been having issues where the simulator becomes unresponsive or the preview becomes unresponsive. So this next one is going to be, what do we want to call this? A loan calculator card. It's going to be a sum view. And right now we just need to return something. So that will get it to be okay. So this something will be loan amount. And then we're going to integrate that up top. So currently we're just playing around with the slider, but this is where we're going to do our loan calculator. And it's going to be this whole bar. So let's get rid of the default slider. We don't need that anymore. And let's get rid of this custom slider. Let's pull this into our new logic down below. So how is this going to work? We are going to need to use a few different views. So let's look at the view and sort of break it down. The big thing you're going to first see is that we've got a loan amount here, a big space, and then the value in blue. Then we've got our slider underneath for that one. And then we've got our down payment, again, that big space, and then the value and our slider. Then we got another title, and then this other custom control that we still have to build. So we are going to structure this using VStacks and HStacks. I'm going to start with a VStack for just this component, and we'll probably call this a loan amount component, and we'll just create that as a separate entity. So let's jump in there. We're going to call that a loan slider, and then we'll have a down payment slider, and we'll just sort of group things together. So let's do a VStack, and I'll extract it once we have something functional of these two things. And the loan amount is going to be an HStack. Okay. And so we can see this is now updated. We've got our loan amount. What we need to do is we have to give it some structure, and we do that using spacer is one way that we can push this to either side. And then in doing so, we want to have padding. And here I'm going to do a inner padding. And I'm going to start extracting. I'll just do it in place, and we'll move variables around. So this is going to be let inner padding CG float equal 20. And let's do an outer padding. Did I spell that wrong? Padding. There we go. Okay, so that should allow us to shift this. Let's resume our preview. To resume a preview, it's going to be Option Command P. I have a whole keyboard shortcuts series that you can watch on learning how to be more productive in Xcode. So that's going to give us some structure. Let's work on also getting some styling here, because I feel like that's going to make this come to life. We could do a shadow of radius. Let's do 2 just to get something. And so here, what you're going to notice is that it's applying the shadow to the wrong thing. So by adding the shadow here, it's actually applying this shadow to all the elements in here and this element, which is not what we want to do. To get the effect that we want, we have to use the background attribute, and we need to pass in a rectangle. And in this case, if we look at the corners, we see it is a slight corner radius. So that's probably like maybe 3 to 5. So let's do a rounded rectangle. Corner radius, and we're going to do, let's do 5. This is another property that we could have. Card corner radius. We're going to have a couple instances of corner radiuses. They might be different. So I'll just extract this in case we need to reuse it. And that's going to be our card corner radius right there. Okay, the default color of a SwiftUI view is going to be black when you do a rectangle. So we need to stylize the background color. So this is going to be our foreground style. And for this, let's go with background. Now that should give us a background that's going to be dependent on if we're in dark or light mode, I believe. So if we were to switch color scheme on, that's dark, that's light, we're going to see that that's going to be the proper colors. There's more work you'll have to do in order to get this to always work. So I'm not going to go into all those details, but we're going to move the shadow radius up. And to do that, I'm going to do another keyboard shortcut that I talk about, which is going to be Option Command and left square brackets. We can move up and down. And so now we're applying that effect to here. But we do have an issue along the top. If we zoom in, you're going to notice that the corner radius of something is a little bit funky. Oh, I put a background of white. So this background here, just to have like a placeholder, is impacting us. So if you have this on line 29, which I don't think maybe you do have, we'll get rid of that right there. Okay, so that's going to be our loan calculator is going to basically be this whole top widget. So now it's starting to look a lot more polished. It's starting to feel like an app, which is super exciting. The content size, I'm not going to set a specific height. So I like to make the views themselves sort of build out the structure. And we've got our spacer, we've got our text. We can start customizing these so these look a little bit nicer. For the, let's see, where are we? Where's our outer padding? Outer padding, outer padding. This should be our outer padding. And then I also want to have probably the top. So I'll just combine those together. We might need a little extra padding on the top. Maybe I'll do a separate. Okay, something like that's going to give us that effect. And then in terms of the back, let's jump back to the shadow because we don't quite have the same effect right now. So we're going to work on getting that to look a lot closer. For that, I kind of want to make the radius bigger. And then if we're concerned about the color or the opacity or like where it is, it doesn't quite look right to me that big, but like when I made it smaller, I'm seeing more above the top than I'd like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to customize this further. What we have is the another property here. We can do all of these. If I hold the Option key and press Enter, we can do the, I'm going to do a black with opacity of 0.2, so it's mostly transparent. And then a radius of, I'll go 15 like I want, and then I'll do a 0 for the X offset, but I'll do 2 down, which should shift it down so there's less shadow up above. We're still going to have some shadow, and so we could play around with pushing it more down, but that might be too much. And maybe I just need to reduce the radius. So maybe if we do 5 and 10 for our radius, you can see when the radius is tight, it's going to be a much more focused drop shadow, but when we want it to spread out, doing something like a 10, that looks pretty good to me. Okay, so that's our background. We're going to reuse this background, so why don't we extract that to its own little, and we'll call this a box background. And I shouldn't need the view builder here. Sometimes I just put that there, but we should be able to get away with not having to put view builder on every one of these. It's really more of an issue when you have if-else statements, and I just sort of instinctively do it. So let's see if we can build that. Cool. So we've got the starting structure. Now, all we need to do to create multiple sliders is duplicate this component. And so we'll extract that as well to its own property. So let's do a, what do we want to call this? We're going to have a down payment slider, and then we're going to have a loan amount slider. So let's call them that. Loan slider. here, we are going to paste this code. And then I'm just going to clean this up. We're refactoring this out to be a lone slider. If we duplicate this, you can sort of see the effect that we get if it likes us. I took away my VStack. So we need to put a new VStack here. And there you can sort of see what this is looking like. And then the spacing, just looking at how that's looking, let's go with 20. So it looks like it's going to be close to our inner padding. We might have to play around with that a little bit more, like ×2, or maybe just 30. It looks like the padding on the edges is not the same. I'm going to go with something that I think looks like this. So let's call this we'll call it row padding, and then we'll insert that right here. We'll separate those two. We can get rid of this. So that's going to help us with the spacing. We're adding a little bit of space up top. We're adding space in between. It's making it feel a little bit less claustrophobic. Cool. So next up, let's work on the styling here. For this text color, let's add a new color. I'm going to go back to our colors, and we're going to add a new static property, let title equal, and then we're just going to use color.secondary as this title color. And then we already have the blue color, so we know what that one is. Let's jump back on over. So all we're doing is storing one of our title colors. And then back in here, we are going to use this. Let's go ahead and apply this title color. So that's going to be our foreground style, and we're going to say colors.title. So that's going to desaturate that black a little bit, and then we're going to do a font weight of medium, see how that looks, make it a little bit chunkier. Let's compare that. I think that looks good. I think if it's a regular, if we just turn that off, you can just sort of see it sort of looks similar. I think we're sort of in between. This image is a little bit smaller. Ideally, your designer would give you stuff, but we're just sort of eyeballing this and just getting something as quick as possible. So that's our loan amount. And then let's start stylizing our other one. This is going to be a foreground style of blue, and it's going to be our colors.blue. And then we are going to make this feel more chunky by making it bold. And so that'll give us a number that more closely matches what we have over there. If you wanted to, you could do font weight, and we could try one of these other ones. Like if bold wasn't bold enough, I think heavy. Heavy is a little bit thicker. I think bold is adequate. So this is another way to do that same thing that we did with just that bold property. Cool. So that's looking a lot better. I think my gray is a little bit dark, but that's okay. We're just going to run with it. Next up, let's duplicate this, copy and paste your loan slider, paste it again. We're going to call this one our down payment slider. And this is going to be our down payments. And let's just have some default values so that this looks pretty. And then up top, instead of doing two loan sliders, we now have a loan slider and a down payment slider. Now, to make these separate, so what you should have now is basically two that look very similar, but we're going to connect them in different ways. And this is something that you could extract to another component. Like you could pull this out, make it so you can customize the title, and then have a binding. To keep things simple and moving along, we're not going to do a whole lot of refactoring other than moving stuff around to different files. But that is definitely something that we could improve this code. There's always more that we can do. So it's just a matter of getting something working quickly, and cleaning it up, which is always kind of a later step. So let's go ahead. We'll create another state property for the down payment. And then what we're going to do is we're going to connect this to that and this slider. And right now we are not doing any math calculations, but we'll come back down to our down payment. And instead of being attached to the binding for loan amount, we will paste in our down payment or type in our down payment. So now what you'll see is that this will move, but these are not actually tied together. They're not controlling the output, which requires some formatting. Which I think we're going to work on next. So how can we format this? So we're currently not displaying it. Well, we're going to use some number formatting that's available, I think, in the text APIs to get this style of formatting. And in order to do that, we're going to need a currency code. So I am just going to help you with that. We're going to create a computed property right now for var currency code. And this is going to be a string value. And we're going to use the current locale from the device. There's a currency property in there. It can be nil if it's not properly set up. So we may or may not have this identifier. And if we don't, we're just going to default to the US dollars. So you might want to customize this to use the currency code of your region. I'm just going to customize it to default to US dollars. Now that we have that, we can go ahead and we can format the loan amount. So we're going to grab that loan amount. And then if we do a comma here, there is a format option. And with the format option, if we do dot and then type in currency, you'll see that we have the currency code option. So this takes a string. So to make this a little bit easier, that's why I extracted this as a computed property. This is something you could move to your view model or presentation layer if you want to, outside of here. And I'm just going to keep it here for simplicity's sake. So this is going to be our currency code. So that should give us formatting. And now what you'll see is it has updated, but now we have decimal places, and that doesn't match the design here. Whenever we're dealing with big numbers like this, we don't need to display all of the decimal places, especially in a clean interface. If this was like an exact show people their current value, I would show this, but since we're just giving them a rough estimate, this is noise that's distracting for the user. So we're going to hide that information. There is another format option that we can chain here, which is going to be precision. And I mean, that documentation, like, it's a really long thing there, but all we have to do is another dot. And here we can do the fractional length or fraction length. And by passing in 0, we can get it so that it omits any of the fractions. So that's a bit of a mouthful. I couldn't figure out a way to extract this. It like appears to be that this is a special interpolation on the actual text string, or I was doing something wrong when I tried to extract it. So I'm just going to keep it all here. It looks a little bit gnarly because there's so much. If you know how to do that, comment down below. It didn't work for me when I tried to extract it. Okay, so that is our text formatting for this. And this is why like having a shared component would be kind of nice, because right now I'm going to have to redo this same logic down here. And we are going to display our down payment. And I just copied that. Let's just clean this up. So we're going to have a format currency code. Just make this bigger and fix the paste. I'm missing 2 parentheses. Okay. It might have been faster just to type it. So again, we're using the format property, and we are formatting it in the currency using the current country code that we've computed using this helper property. We can always reorganize where these go, but as you're writing code, I like to be as streamlined as possible. And then the precision, giving a fraction length of 0, so no decimal places. And then if we look at it, we can see that it's now updating up to 100,000, up to 100,000. If I want to go up to 500,000, like if you're planning to buy a house, you're going to be spending a lot more than 100,000. So seeing those types of values is easy as just changing the range. So putting 54,000 down and getting a loan of, let's say, 236,000. So that is styling this. There's one last section that we need to start fleshing out, and that's going to be our loan term. So var loan term selector. There's going to be some view, and in here, we're just going to have a VStack. And this is going to be our text to start us off, and that's going to be the loan term and estimated APR. Okay, so we've got a little widget that we can now throw in up top. So that's our loan selector. And I'm just going to throw it in here. So this keeps everything kind of clean and keeps the compiler, I think, a little bit happier. I've been having issues as if I try to do everything all at once, SwiftUI was chugging, at least in Xcode 16.0, and it was unresponsive. And so I'm going to try our approach, at least today, of just sort of extracting everything and sort of working this way. So we've got our loan slider, our down payment slider, and our loan term. We see that all here. We just have to fix the alignment here. And in this case, if we add an alignment of leading, that's actually not going to do anything because our content's not big enough. So this is more of a content size issue. Our other control is going to actually cause this UI to stretch out. But if we needed to, we could give this the frame and say max width dot infinity. And then here we would do alignment leading. And there we go. That way we have it sort of set up. So that's something that you sometimes have to do. We can set the foreground style. We're essentially going to want to do something similar to what we did for our other titles. So this is something that you might want to extract out. For simplicity, we're just going to copy and paste those 2 attributes that we needed. And that's going to make this start looking like the rest of the UI that we need to do. So without this, it's going to stay centered. So if we look at it right now, it's centered. With this, it will stretch it out. We can sort of understand how this is working if we use a background property. So a lot of times when I'm stuck, if you get stuck on why something isn't what it should be, just set a background and use blue or some color red so that you can see it on the screen how it's going to stretch. And we can sort of see what's going to happen is if I comment this out with command \, you're going to see how it's just centered. That's because the content isn't being told that it needs to stretch out. If it was combined with this component's going to go edge to edge on most devices except maybe iPad, where it's going to push that content outward. And so in situations where you need the UI to push outwards, that's where this can be helpful. Another option, if you didn't want to go this route, would be to do a HStack. And if you just put a spacer here, the spacer will eat that extra space. So we could turn off this frame, and the spacer is going to eat that extra space. So there's different ways that we can control the layout in our applications. All right, so I think that's a good stopping point. We've covered a lot of ground with breaking down this UI. We've got the building blocks. To me, that 5-point corner radius doesn't quite look right. So let's see if we can adjust that real quick. Let's go down to 4. We're just looking at this corner radius and just trying to see what's going to make sense. Even 3 looks a little bit better to me. I'm going to go with 4. I like 4 better. We're going to take some creative liberty when we're doing this type of stuff. Not everything needs to match exactly. In this case, the graphic up top, we're mostly similar. I didn't put the back button in, but that's something that we could add via the toolbar. So if you wanted to mock up like this whole experience, we would need to just create a back button on the top leading. So we did the toolbar here. We could do another toolbar item. And here we could give it a placement of top bar leading. Hit tab, press enter. And then in here, we could do a new button. And this is just to mock it up. Ideally, you would actually be pushing this onto the view stack. And here we would do the chevron. We make it white. Don't know if we need that. And then we make it bold. And that sort of gives us the feel. It does need to be inset, I think. So let's give it a padding leading. Okay. Actually, I don't know. I don't know if we need to do that. I'm going to take it out. I don't think we need padding. It's going to be in its proper spot for a view. So we've got the first chunk of the app down. We don't have any calculations yet. And in terms of what we need to do next, so we've done the custom slider. We have not done this yet. We just did the loan card. And so next up, what we're going to do is the slider control. And then we'll get into like the data model and the estimated payments. This is probably going to get mixed with some of that. And the calculations will hook up at the very end. And then any kind of refactoring that we want to do. So we are working our way through implementing this. If this was helpful, hit the like button. If you want any of the sample code, I'm going to commit all this and you can go ahead and grab it. You can just hit the link down below. You can get that code so that you can download the final version that we have here, or you can look at the commit history and gather what you need. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one where we talk about creating this custom selector widget. It's going to be super fun. I'll see ya.